Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to The Secret of Karma Yoga, transforming daily chores into spiritual practice. Someone left a comment about another video of Swami Tadatmananda's. I think it was the 1 year celebration, or New Year's celebration. I may react to that, but I'm kind of making my way up to that point. I just don't know if, reacting to a celebration. Someone did say there's a lot of good information in there, so I will. Once I make my way up that list. But anyways, this is the next on the list. The Secret of Karma Yoga. And this is, do I practice this? And the way I see this is being truthful in your actions. So that no matter whether you're right or wrong, you won't suffer because you did the best you can with your actions. That's one part of it. Because if you did the best you can and you're wrong, it's like, well, I did the best the best I can. I didn't know any better, and had I known, obviously I would have done that. But I want to say it's not my fault, but it's just the fact that, hey, look, I tried, I gave it my best shot, I failed. Perfect time for a learning opportunity. So take it as a positive, as it's a way of learning too, to be better. As long as you're doing your best, as long as you're always trying to be better, you can't really fault yourself. Now, don't get me wrong, if you make way too many mistakes though, that you might want to look into that. But generally speaking, if you do your best and you're always trying to do better, you shouldn't suffer for your actions. That's the way I look at it. So let's anyways go ahead and get started. One of the ways: money, writing, cell phone, laptop, task, and time management.
In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna teaches the mighty warrior Arjuna how to practice Karma Yoga very elaborately. Those teachings make the Gita unique among Vedantic scriptures. Most other texts, like the Upanishads and works of Shankara, emphasize spiritual wisdom and meditation, but they say little about Karma Yoga. Why? Probably because those texts were composed by ancient rishis and saintly monks who lived in remote forests and mountain caves. They didn't have to commute to work or pay their bills each month like you might have to. As a result, their teachings are more inclined towards those who have already retired from worldly life. On the other hand, Sri Krishna's teachings were imparted in the middle of a battlefield, a field of conflict that symbolically represents the challenging and sometimes confrontational situations that people struggle with every day. For this reason, the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita are especially inclined towards those who pursue spiritual growth while living conventional worldly lives. The title of this video suggests that the Gita harbors some kind of secret about Karma Yoga. What is it? Well, even after reading and rereading the Bhagavad Gita, many people fail to clearly understand exactly what they're supposed to do in the practice of Karma Yoga.
What they're supposed to do in practicing of Karma Yoga. So I did say it a little bit in the beginning. Being absolutely, genuinely truthful and honest in your actions. And to always learn from your mistakes to be better. With that in mind, you cannot fault yourself for making a mistake. Now, mind you, it's not to say that someone says, here, do brain surgery and you're like, I've never been taught this, but I will give it my best and honest shot. No. Obviously, you do things that you know you can do. You might not be the best at it, but you have knowledge and you have the skills to do it. Even skilled people who do things that they've done for a long time in their lives still make mistakes. We are never going to be perfect. So with that in mind, as long as you have the skills in hand and are capable of doing it, so long as you give it your best and honest shot, you should not fault yourself. Understand that we are imperfect beings, we make mistakes, and so long as you learn from that mistake and you correct it as best as you can, or addressed it in other ways, you cannot fault yourself on that. I will say that. Hopefully we're in line here.
Sri Krishna's teachings are surprisingly subtle and extremely profound. So, in a manner of speaking, the secret is hidden in plain view.
Do your job.
When I studied the Bhagavad Gita under my guru's guidance, I complained to a fellow student, "These teachings on karma yoga make knowledge of Brahman seem simple by comparison." It took me a long time to fully appreciate the subtleties of karma yoga and practice it every day. Another difficulty in understanding karma yoga is the fact that some of Sri Krishna's teachings have been turned into overly simplistic cliches or trite sayings. For example, karma yoga is often described as selfless service. That's a really beautiful expression, but we have to ask, is the service done in the name of karma yoga truly selfless? Many people visit an ashram like ours and ask if they can do selfless service. Sometimes a visitor will grab a broom and enthusiastically sweep the kitchen floor. But at home, if his wife asks him to sweep the kitchen floor, he resists. Why? Because sweeping the ashram kitchen makes him feel good, but sweeping his own kitchen feels like a tedious chore. His service at the ashram is not exactly selfless, because he does it to feel good about himself, as a dedicated karma yogi. Another oversimplification of karma yoga is to describe it as dedicating your deeds to God. But exactly how do you dedicate your deeds like that? Some Hindu children have a beautiful habit of writing at the top of their homework papers, "Shri Krishnarpanam Astu." May this be an offering unto Sri Krishna. But they write that to invoke Sri Krishna's blessings to get a better grade, which is for their own sakes, not for Krishna. Merely saying, "I dedicate this to God," doesn't magically transform your deed into karma yoga. For example, imagine a Hindu thief who says "Shri Krishnarpanam Astu" as he enters a bank to rob it. Obviously, what it really means to dedicate a deed to God has to be properly understood. We'll discuss this later, along with the real meaning of selfless service.
Essentially, not expecting anything in return. Yeah, I kind of understood that. I mean, I did something like that recently. It wasn't really anything big. A friend was having issues with the computer. I decided to look into it, and I told him what was wrong with it. And he ended up giving me his computer. I end up buying the parts that he needs and installing on his computer before he even paid me. And then once everything is done and set up, I gave it to him, and all he paid me was for the parts. I said I don't want anything. It's fine, you know. I don't mind helping people out. He did end up giving me something for it. I didn't ask for anything, and I really appreciate what he gave me too. I actually really like it. But like I said, I told him that it wasn't anything major. It didn't seem like it was anything difficult, but for him it was something he's not familiar with, not comfortable with either. So I appreciate what he gave him very much so, actually quite a lot. I really, really like it. But again, I never asked for anything other than just the payment for the parts.
One more common but overly simple description of karma yoga is to say that it is merely to fulfill all your duties. It's certainly true that you have to fulfill all your duties in the practice of karma yoga, but there's so much more to it. Suppose a woman meticulously fulfills all her duties, but she always feels angry and resentful about having so many chores to do each day, and as a result, she constantly complains. With such an attitude, her deeds are just karma, not karma yoga. Now that we've looked at some misconceptions about karma yoga, let's discuss how to practice it as taught in the Bhagavad Gita. Karma yoga is a sadhana, a spiritual practice that's meant to help you attain the ultimate goal of spiritual life, a goal known as moksha, liberation, enlightenment, or simply freedom from worldly suffering. Such a lofty goal can be reached only by those who are completely dedicated to it. And that kind of complete dedication is impossible as long as you are focused on gaining pleasure, comfort, intimacy, money, and so on. According to Sri Krishna, those pursuits will never culminate in a state of perfect peace and contentment. When you clearly recognize the impossibility of gaining perfect peace and contentment through worldly pursuits, your orientation towards life will undergo a radical shift, a shift in which you give up seeking that contentment through worldly pursuits and instead seek it through spiritual growth. As a result of this inner transformation, you will cease to be a bhubukshu, a seeker of pleasure, and instead you will become a mumukshu, a seeker of moksha, liberation. The practice of karma yoga depends on this inner transformation. As long as you hope that worldly activities will eventually lead you to perfect contentment, you will continue to be a karmi, not a karma yogi. Now, to be completely dedicated to gaining enlightenment has a startling implication. To reach a small goal, a little bit of effort is enough. And for a larger goal, like building a career or raising a family, much more effort is needed. So then, how much effort is required to attain enlightenment? Not just a big effort, but one that's off the chart, so to speak. In practical terms, enlightenment requires full-time effort. Anything less will not be sufficient. In my late 20s, my daily schedule began with 2 hours of sadhana. I read scriptures, I studied Sanskrit, and I meditated every day before going to work. I felt proud of being so dedicated to this daily practice. Years later, I recognized how foolish and vain I had been back then. I realized that by dedicating 2 hours a day to spiritual practice, I was, in effect, dedicating the remaining 14 hours of each day to non-spiritual activities, to worldly pursuits. It's obvious which of those two would have a greater effect.
I hope he's going to say here that it's not necessarily that you have to give up your worldly pursuits. You just have to have a different perspective to it. As in, you don't look at it as a way of gaining or making you... You don't have worldly pursuits to make you happy. You're looking externally for happiness when it's always going to change. So you should never look externally for world happiness. For me, it's a little bit different. I do look outwardly for worldly happiness, but my perspective is that I don't need it. So I may look outwardly for it, but I don't need it. Meaning that if it comes, that's great. If it doesn't, I never needed it in the first place. That's how I look at it. I don't know if Osho looked at it that way too. Again, I used to react to his videos, but it's always been blocked, so I kind of stopped. And I know Osho talked about a lot of pleasures in life. Again, it's been a long while, but I think if I were to, what I know now, and go back or if I could react to some of his videos, is that I think you look at it in such a way where you can enjoy the pleasures of life. But the main thing is not to suffer from them. If you suffer from them, then you are doing it wrong. Then what you're doing is you're looking for that pleasure to give you pleasure. As opposed to, if it gives you pleasure, that's great. But if it doesn't, that's fine. You know, that's the way how I look at things. And that's how I do things so far. I'm not saying every single thing has always been successful like that. But for the most part, it has been. So I'm wondering if he'll say that, because it seems like in this video it says only 2 hours were dedicated to spirituality. And then after that, he just leaves it all behind and does his normal thing. I have a feeling he's going to say that he practices what he learns in those 2 hours throughout the entirety of the day. That way it's always being practiced.
In retrospect, dividing my life into 2 hours of sadhana and 14 hours of worldly activities was completely contrary to the practice of karma yoga. As we saw, to attain enlightenment, full-time effort is required. So it's necessary to transform those 14 hours of worldly activities into spiritual practice. And that can be accomplished through the practice of karma yoga. So then, how does karma yoga actually transform your ordinary deeds into spiritual practice? Your daily activities like driving your car, cooking dinner, or using your computer? Well, first of all, the practice of karma yoga begins with the inner transformation we discussed before. When you recognize the impossibility of gaining perfect contentment through worldly pursuits, and you choose instead to dedicate yourself to a life of spiritual growth. In addition to that transformation, karma yoga requires you to avoid adharmic deeds of any kind. Obviously, such deeds can never be transformed into spiritual practice. Only after you dedicate yourself to spiritual growth and adopt a dharmic lifestyle can the actual practice of karma yoga begin. Simply put, Karma yoga is not something you do, but rather it's a specific prayerful attitude that you cultivate and hold in your mind and heart while you carry out your daily activities. First and foremost, that attitude is based on knowing that you are merely an agent of action. That means you do not produce the fruits or results of your actions. For example, I can drop this flower, but I don't make it fall. It falls because of the laws of nature, laws created and governed by Ishvara, the God of the cosmos. This important spiritual principle applies to everything you do. You drive your car, but you arrive at your destination because of Ishvara. You work hard, but you achieve success because of Ishvara. You get married, but you are blessed with a wonderful family because of Ishvara. This prayerful attitude is based on understanding Ishvara as the giver of the fruits of your deeds, as the karma phala data. This profound principle is expressed in one of the most frequently quoted verses in the Bhagavad Gita. Karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana.
I like this. Over actions alone you have authority, but never over their results. I'll say this with that. I don't know if it's a counter or not, because it's not really meant to be a counter, but it is a little bit of more of an inside. Inside. What does that mean? More of I don't know how to say. I'm just gonna say, mind you, your actions matter a lot as at the end results. The end result is not guaranteed, but the better your actions, generally speaking, the better the results. Kind of like if you're trying to make hot cocoa. You know, if you boil the water it's boiling hot and you pour it into a cup, then you grab some hot cocoa that's meant for 200 milliliters or 8 ounces, 240 milliliters or 8 ounces of water, and you pour the exact amount of cocoa in milligrams to that 8 ounces or 240 milliliters of water. You stir it, you taste it, it's like, the end result of your action is deliciousness. But if you get some hot water and you pour it in there, and it's like, well, it's not boiling, it's fine, whatever, I can't wait, I'm tired of waiting, I can't wait for it to boil. And you grab just one scoop of hot cocoa and you stir it in there and you drink. It's like, oh my god, this just tastes like diluted hot cocoa. It's so diluted, but so your effort wasn't there. You didn't wait until the water was boiling to get hot so that the mixture can mix really well. You didn't add the right amount because you just grabbed the scoop and just put it in there real quick. You didn't measure out the amount for the precise amount of water in your bowl. So I just want to say this, that you have over actions alone you have authority, absolutely. And how planned out, how much effort in those actions will have an influence in the end result, but will never dictate what that result is. Or not dictate, but will not guarantee you get the results. You have influence over the results, but not guaranteeing the results, I guess. I don't know. If you have a counter for that, let me know. But I genuinely believe that, because, again, like I said, you can sit there and you measure out 6 ounces of water or 8 ounces of water or 240 milliliters of water. You measure out enough grams of cocoa powder for exactly the amount of liquid you have in there. You waited until the water was boiling. You plan everything out. You put a lot of effort into all of this. Make sure everything's perfect so that the mixture is perfect. All that resulted in a perfect mixture. Again, I mean, if you didn't realize that the cocoa was expired and you tasted like, oh my gosh, even everything was perfect, even the mixture, you forgot that the cocoa was expired. You're like, oh, this tastes bitter. So that's where the results can still change, even though you've done everything perfect with a lot of effort into it. But generally speaking, though, I like to believe that the best efforts you give, the more honest efforts you give, and yeah, I guess the best efforts that you give, you end up with a better result. But it's not guaranteed, but a better results.
Here, adhikara does not mean right or entitlement, as it often does in Hindi. In this context, the Sanskrit word means scope of authority or sphere of control. Adhikara is the domain in which you are in charge. So, to paraphrase the verse, you have control over your actions, but you have no control over their results, because those results are in Ishvara's hands, so to speak, not in your hands. When you become mindful of this fact, every time you perform a deed, whatever it might be, you can recognize Ishvara's direct involvement as the giver of results. To prayerfully appreciate Ishvara's presence in all your activities can help you develop deep feelings of reverence and gratitude. In this way, Karma Yoga can bring a prayerful dimension to everything you do. Ishvara not only gives you the fruits of your actions, but also Ishvara blesses you with the power, skills, and knowledge you need to accomplish those actions. Ishvara, as creator of the universe, endows every person not only with life, but also with physical strength, energy, and many amazing mental faculties. Based on this spiritual understanding, you can consider the powers of your body and mind to be gifts or blessings of Ishvara. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, Nimitta matram bhava. O Arjuna, understand that you are merely an instrument. As Arjuna proceeds into battle, he should reflect on the fact that the strength of his body and his skills as a warrior are all blessings of Ishvara. In the same way, on the battlefield of daily life, you can recognize and appreciate the many gifts you've been given by Ishvara. Your intelligence, your skills and resourcefulness, and your ability to care and nurture. This kind of appreciation brings yet another prayerful dimension to everything you do. The practice of Karma Yoga is based primarily on these two principles, that Ishvara gives you the results of your actions, and that all your capabilities are blessings of Ishvara. But merely understanding these principles is not enough. They have to be assimilated, integrated into your daily life. At first, you will probably need to remind yourself again and again of Ishvara's presence in all your activities. Of course, daily study of the Bhagavad Gita can certainly help you remember that throughout the day. Over a period of time, you can gradually develop a constant appreciation of Ishvara, an appreciation that remains firm even while you're fully engaged in activities. That's what it means to pray without ceasing, as our Christian friends say. by developing this abiding, prayerful appreciation of Ishvara's presence in your life, you will truly be engaged in full-time spiritual practice. It's really not so hard to maintain that prayerful appreciation throughout the day. For example, right now, I know that everything I'm teaching is given by Ishvara. Ishvara in the form of my own Guru and all those who came before. Also, whatever communication skills and intelligence that I'm using right now are also blessings of Ishvara. Even though I've developed those skills over the years, you can't develop something that you don't already have in some measure, something given by Ishvara. As far as I'm concerned, the teaching taking place right now is 99% due to Ishvara and only 1% due to my personal effort. Each time I reflect on this fact, I'm filled with tremendous gratitude for all the gifts I've been given. When your practice of karma yoga grows strong, a prayer of gratitude will accompany each and every deed you perform. When you get out of bed in the morning and brush your teeth, you'll be grateful that you have teeth to brush. When you pay your bills each month, you'll be grateful for having a job. And when you spend time with your family, you'll be grateful to Ishvara for their presence in your life. Such is the attitude of a karma yogi.
I do wonder, he said he was giving like 99% Ishvara and 1% his efforts. I'm wondering if in this scenario here, it would be 98%. I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. It's really weird. Again, my mind thinks weird stuff. The reason why I say 98% is because 1% of his efforts into making this, 1% of my effort in watching this. And I think that's maybe the most. You guys watching this would not make it 97%. It's because of my 1% of watching this, and then your 1% of watching me makes it 98% again. I don't think it can go any lower than that. I think so. I wonder if he would say that's maybe right. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense to me because again, someone's teaching out there. So 99% Ishvara, 1% that person. But someone else also has to contribute to listening. So 99% for them it's 99% Ishvara and 1% to listen. But in terms of the accumulation of what's going on between Ishvara and the two people, the teacher and the student, 98% and 1%. 1% for the teacher, 1% from the students to have that teaching and learning mechanic. I don't know. I'm throwing a number out there, and does it mean anything? Probably not. I don't know. Like I said, my brain works weird ways, and I was kind of curious if that would be the case. How relevant that is? Probably nothing. Waste of time. Dedication and selfless service.
Before we conclude, let's revisit the two common misconceptions about karma yoga we discussed before. First of all, what does it really mean to dedicate your deeds to Ishvara? If you are truly practicing karma yoga, then while driving to the office on Monday morning, you will not think for a moment that a successful career or big salary can possibly bring you perfect peace and contentment. Instead, you will go to work to fulfill your responsibilities and follow dharma. which will aid your process of spiritual growth. Following Dharma is to act in conformance with Ishvara's laws, laws that not only govern the universe, but also govern people's behavior, like the prohibition against himsa, causing harm to others. In a manner of speaking, by following Dharma, you are obeying Ishvara. To set aside your own agenda and act in accordance with Dharma is exactly what it means to dedicate your deeds to Ishvara. In other words, dedicating your deeds is following Dharma instead of following your desires. Also, like a good driver follows traffic laws not to avoid getting a ticket, but for the safety of everyone on the road, in the same way, a karma yogi follows Dharma not to avoid sin and other consequences, but for the sake of spiritual growth that brings you closer to Ishvara. And finally, what does it really mean to perform selfless service? Selfless means without self-interest, without a personal agenda. After you undergo the inner transformation of recognizing the futility of worldly pursuits, you will no longer be motivated by selfish desires. But even then, you will still be motivated to seek spiritual growth. That's what it means to be a mumukshu, a seeker of liberation or enlightenment. The desire for enlightenment will be the last desire you ever have, but as long as it's still present, you will not be completely agendaless. And the acts you perform will not be completely selfless. The only person who can truly act selflessly is an enlightened person, a jnani, one who has no needs or agenda whatsoever.
Interesting. This right here, what he said, reminds me of my talk about how I'm not in pursuit of enlightenment. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it goes back to, again, I keep going back to this poor guy that was talking to Acharya Prashant about, I'm desperate for enlightenment. I need to go do this. What do I need to do? He says he has a good job. He graduated college with a good degree, and he's so worried that he might not have enough time for enlightenment. It's like, dude, this guy is worrying so much about it that he's never going to achieve it. That's not the way to achieve something that you want, especially in this, is to desire it so much so that you're going to sacrifice a lot of other things in your life. I'm not going to sit there and say I'm an enlightened person. By no means, that is not true. But at least I think I'm heading in the right direction. Again, by pursuing enlightenment, you're not going to get enlightenment. I think I've said that before. But it's kind of weird to think, it's like, hey, in order for me to be a better driver, I need to practice driving. And then I need to be on top of it. Enlightenment, you don't practice enlightenment. You practice, well, I may be wrong on this one, but you practice essentially what it's saying by selfless acts. You don't say, I'm doing this to get enlightenment. I'm doing this to act selfishly. By doing that, you're just contradicting what you want to do. And essentially, of what he said here, it needs to be without agendas, without reward. To be genuinely enlightened, you have to do things without reward, without expectation of anything at all. I'm pretty sure most people know that, but I'm sure it's kind of hard to act in such a way. For me, I'm not saying every single thing I do it's always been like that, but I've come to accept a lot of it. When I do my job, I do my job. You know, if I have fun doing it, that's great. I get pleasure from having fun doing my job, obviously. But if it doesn't, whenever I go down there and do it again, if I don't have that fun and pleasure, it doesn't affect me in a way. I complete my job. If I have fun doing it, I have fun doing it. If I don't, I don't. But I do need to do my job. Yeah.
Such a person is said to have gained krita krityata, a state in which there's absolutely nothing left to accomplish in life.
Okay, there's where I fail. I still have things to accomplish in my life. And I do want to accomplish them. So these are not things that are like, oh, if I complete it, I complete it. If I don't, I don't know. Those are things that I want to accomplish. So clearly there is proof enough.
But then, having gained that state, what is it that motivates the actions of an enlightened person? That's actually a very complicated topic, which we can't discuss right now, but here's one way to understand it. Many times my guru was asked why he teaches Vedanta day after day after day. Each time he was asked this, he simply said, "I teach because you ask me to." To me, that seems like an excellent example of what selfless service truly means.
Okay, I think that's it for the video. Yeah. He does such a great job of explaining. Yeah, and interesting. I don't know why do you teach? I was trying to think of an answer. What would I say if I were a teacher and someone were to ask me that? I would say I teach because I hope that I can ease the suffering of people. I think that's what I would say, and that's what I think I've said before. I hope that me reacting to this video is hopefully I can maybe perhaps clarify some things. Again, I don't know if I've said this or not, but I thought about this. If anyone were to ever take my advice and it harms them, I would not feel sorry for my actions. The reason why being, it seems harsh, but the reason why being is because I never told you to do any of these things. I have no power over you whatsoever. I can say anything I want. I can tell you to do whatever I want you to do. You are ultimately the one that makes that decision. Like the comment in here said that you have the domain over yourself. What was the exact quotes here? Anyways, you have authority over your actions and nothing else. Same thing here. I have authority over whatever I say, whatever I do, but no matter what I say or no matter what I do, I cannot force you to do anything. Obviously, there's asterisk there where if I point a gun into your head, that you're gonna obviously do something I do. But in terms of without those kind of things, like I can't sit there and say jump up and down 3 times. I'll wait. Now, write in the comments below if you did that. Obviously I can't tell you to do that. So that's the reason why, no matter what I say in this videos, I'm not going to feel sorry, because these are my best intentions, my best interpretations. And ultimately, you are the one, whether you decide to say, that's a good idea, I will follow that. I will take up what you taught here and pursue it. You ultimately make that decision, not me. Kind of like Swami Tadatmananda, Acharya, Sadhguru, Swami Sarvapriyananda. They do their best effort to teach as best as possible. That doesn't mean everyone's going to understand it the correct way. That doesn't mean everyone's going to become enlightened. That doesn't mean everyone is going to live a happy and fulfilling life. That's an impossible task to ask of these people. The best they can do is teach as best as they can and hope that you reduce your suffering. Minimum requirement. Hope to reduce your suffering. That's my standard. Minimum requirement. Stub my toe 1 less time this month than I did in the previous years. accomplished. Just again, like I said, minimum standards. Because if you have a very high expectation, you're gonna fail a lot. One small step at a time, you'll see more successes. And if what I say here helps people, that's great. I can feel great about that. If what I say here doesn't help people, and someone took my advice and they made something in their life worse, I feel bad a little bit, but ultimately you made that decision. So even in the successes that you did, ultimately you still made that decision. You made it successful. I just said words. You took it, you ran with it, and you blew it up. You made it great. Ultimately, you made that decision, whether it's good or bad. That's the way I see it. Anyways, that's my reaction to Secret of Karma Yoga. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down, down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.